Hello and welcome to the blue portion of my Modern Horizons 3 limited set review. Um, as the slide before you suggest, we're going to be talking about blue cards today and how good I think they're going to be in limited. Specifically, I don't play a ton of constructed. I play a little more than I used to, but still not super knowledgeable about, especially modern. Um, but today we're going to be talking about something that I do know quite well in the format that I'm partial to, and that is limited. If you haven't been here before, show the tiers. I use 5 tiers to describe how good I think cards are going to be. This is a little bit different than maybe the way that some people grade cards. I like it. It's a little simpler. Tier 1 is good. Tier 5 is bad. Tier 3 is average. All that stuff. Does it maybe mean that there's a lot of tier 3s? Yeah, but I think, again, the point of the set review is not necessarily what the grade is, but it's about discussing how the card plays and maybe some play patterns maybe people haven't thought of. It's just good to talk out. In some ways, the set review is for me as much as it is for anybody who's interested in watching it. It is really just nice, and I found that I played better when I make these. Like when I make these, I found that I do better earlier in the format than when I don't make them. And we're gonna start by getting right into the blue cards here with Ether Spike. 1 and a blue for an instant. You choose target spell. You get 2 energy. Then you may pay any amount of energy. Counter that spell unless its controller plays 1 for each energy paid this way. So this is like a quench we've seen. Quench is a card that shows up every set pretty much at this point. To varying degrees of success, I would say that the last couple have been okay. The last really good one was Streets of New Capenna. I mean, Phantom Interference is fine from OTJ. It's okay. I would put it in tier 3. And that's where I've decided to put this card. Now, this card can sometimes be Mana Leak. It can be better than Mana Leak. I do want to caution a little bit. It's like, oh, you can spend any energy that you have on this. It's like, well, this isn't really like an aspirational way to spend energy. You kind of, I have never played with energy a ton personally. I haven't, but my read on energy and having seen other people play and whatever is that generally it's nice to have ways to just spend random energy, but you'd kind of prefer to be saving it for something that's generating actual material advantage. That's how you get that's how you get it. That's how you get there with it. Now the nice thing about this card is that you can pay only 1. If your opponent is completely tapped out, you can say, all right, I'm just going to pay 1 and they can't cast their spell. That's great. It also works later on in the game. You say you pay 4 energy, your opponent probably can't pay 4. You're using a lot of energy there, but maybe you couldn't use it on anything else, and in the late game you need to counter their spell, and it works there too. So I do like the card. I think it's playable, but I'm not thrilled. Amphibian downpour. 2 and a blue for an aura with flash and storm. Enchant creature. Enchant a creature lose all abilities and is a blue frog with base charge on this 1/1. So essentially, this is like turn all of your opponent's creatures into 1/1s for 3 mana. We've kind of this isn't a card that's good by itself, and it isn't a card that's there was Asinine Antics, which again was 6 mana, so it's twice as expensive. But generally, you're going to kind of be unhappy with just yes, they lose all abilities and whatever, but they still get to keep the creature and whatever. This has a higher ceiling than the other ones. Essentially, the way I see this card, the average case scenario playing out with this card is, it's turn 5, and my opponent has cast their 4-drop or their 5. Let's just say they're 4-drop, and they have a 2/2 or a 3/3 in play, something like that. I cast this card. You turn the 4-drop into a 1/1, and you turn the 2/2 into a 1/1. That's okay. I mean, obviously it has higher case scenarios than that, but a lot of creatures have ETBs, and this doesn't really get rid of them, and they can remove it. I'm just not sold on this. You kind of got to prove it to me with these type of effects, and this one's not proving it to me as of right now. Bespoke Battle Wagon. 3 and a blue for a 5/6 vehicle. You can tap it to get 2 energy. You can tap it to pay. You can pay 2 energy to tap it to tap target creature, or you can pay 3 energy to tap it to draw a card, or you can pay 4 energy and it becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. It does crew 4. So I actually upgraded this. This was tier 4, and I upgraded it because it looks really slow. Right? This is one of those stereotypical, it's real slow, but once it gets going. But I'm like, it does have some of that threat of activation, right? If you have 4 energy, your opponent can see that. It's like, well, I can't really attack into this thing. They could block with their battle wagon, and then it's kind of it is out. Like it's big. Um, it also like on turn. Um, oh wait, no, this is a vehicle. No, but you can hold on. Oh boy, my game knowledge. Oh no. I'm about to be outing myself as somebody that doesn't know whether or not vehicles can tap immediately. This is not good. This is not a good look. This is a bad look. Um, I was thinking that you can immediately tap this, but actually I don't think you can because it's a vehicle. No, but I think you can tap it, but it can't attack. So you should be able to tap it immediately. I think you should be able to tap it immediately. And if you can't, that's on me, and I'm sorry, and it's a worse card. But I think you could play 4 mana and tap this immediately for energy. You don't see vehicles that can tap themselves very often. But I do think you can do that. Maybe I'm wrong, and it's totally possible that I'm wrong. If you can't tap this immediately, it's terrible. It's an F. It's unplayed. It's tier 5. Like, you should never play it. Don't play it. But I think you can. So I'm trusting that that's how it works, and remembering, and you know that's life. Next up is Brain Surge. 2 in a blue for an instant. Draw 4 cards and put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. There's like a draw 2 or draw 3, I guess, theme, which is kind of a draw 2, like a theme around having cards in your deck that allow you to draw 2 cards in a turn. It's kind of the theme. This card actually allows you to trigger the draw 3 stuff on your opponent's turn. Kind of relevant. There's some stuff that matters for. Um, Getting to look at 4 cards is always good. It's better than not getting to look at 4 cards. Um, Divination is not like we saw Quick Study in Wilds of Eldraine, and that was a playable card, but definitely tier 4, firmly in tier 4 for me. This card is better than that card. I think it synergizes better with the set, and I bumped it up a full tier as a result. But I don't think it's mandatory by any stretch of the imagination. Consign to Memory. Single blue mana for an instant with Replicate 1, and you can counter target triggered ability or couple the spell. 2 situational, not really for limited. Just no need to really spend too much time on it. Art is sweet though. Copy Crook. 2 blue for a 0/0. You may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it has whenever this creature attacks, it connives. So we know that connive is a very powerful ability. We saw this in SNC. And we know this. We know that it's very powerful. So I the 4 mana clone variants tend to not be very good. This one's double pipped. This only hits creatures. Sometimes they hit permanents. It's still playable. These cards are still playable. They just have fallen considerably down the limited tier list in terms of like where people used to think they were and where people now sort of think they are. And they're okay. I just don't. I don't love them. I don't hate them. And I have that. My grade sort of reflects that. Like, this is a totally average card, and you'll be fine playing it and not super sad when you don't have it. Corrupted Shapeshifter. 3 and a blue for a star with it is devoid. That's a mechanic right there. One of the mechanics of all time has returned. As a corrupted shapeshifter enters the battlefield, it becomes your choice of a 3/3 creature with flying, a 2/5 creature with vigilance, or a 0/12 creature with defender. So this is kind of a call out to like Primal Clay. Primal Clay is notably not a good card. This card actually might even be worse. I don't know. It's not, but like it kind of is. I don't know. It's bad. Don't play this. All the modes suck. Yes, you have the ability to choose which mode you want, but all the modes are bad. So don't play this card. There's just no need to do it. Deem Inferior. 3 and a blue for a sorcery. This book costs 1 less to cast for each card you've drawn this turn. The owner of target non-land permanent puts it on the into their library second from the top or on the bottom. So we've seen the like top or bottom for 4 mana, sorcery card. It varies considerably from set to set in terms of how strong it is. Blue is pretty incentivized to be drawing extra cards this set. And, if this is 3 mana, we know that it becomes considerably better. The card going from second to the top instead of the top is usually better. It kind of depends on how good your opponent is at the game, but usually it's better. Yeah, so like it's I like this card quite a bit. I think it's solid removal. I don't think it's a super high priority, but I do think this is going to see considerable play. And it's again, these cards tend to be better in assertive blue decks, which in this format maybe not necessarily where you're going to be a ton of the time, but it's just fine. It's just a fine card. Deep Analysis. 3 and a blue for a sorcery. Target player draws 2 cards. Flashback for 1 in the blue. Pay 3 life. Does the same thing. This is a reprint. Originally, obviously, in its original format, it was like the best card ever because this was like 2004 or something. It's still a good card. It's a much better card if you don't have to pay for the front side of the card and you can like find a way to discard it for value or something. It's still okay. There is, again, it draws you 3 cards on a turn because you draw for your turn. And it's on your turn draws 2 cards, so it does trigger all that stuff, which is good. I don't think it's mandatory. It's a pure card draw spell. Those tend not to be amazing. So it's a lot of card draw. You know, there's just other ways to do that. Depth Defiler. 3 blue for a 3/5 with Devoid. When you cast, it has a kicker for a colorless mana. When you cast the spell, choose one. If it was kicked, choose both instead. So you can either return a creature to its owner's hand. You can draw 2 cards, then discard a card. The target player does, probably you. I really like this card. I like this card a lot. So yes, it's Del Pipped. I don't like Del Pip. Whatever. It's Del Pipped. It's 5 mana, really 6 mana. Blue is one of the colors that's trying to do the colorless thing. The colors that are trying to have access to colorless mana are blue, red, and green. As far as I can tell, those seem to be the colors that really do have access to those, especially blue and green. Those colorless mana producers. Even if you can't kick this, you can. A cute thing you can do with it is this is not good, but you can't do it if you have a bunch of like draw 2 card return payoffs. You can kick it, have it do both, bounce itself, and then do it every turn. Kind of cool, it's kind of a cool. Like you can do that. I like it. You can do that. I'm happy that the design space of allowing you to target, itself with the ability to bounce itself is kind of cool. It's nice, no complaints. I think it's a really sweet card. Dreamtide Whale. Speaking of sweet cards. 2 and a blue for a 7/5 with Vanishing 2. When a player casts their second spell, each turn proliferate. So 3 mana for a 7/5. How good is 3 mana for a 7/5? I mean, that's big. There's no denying the size on this card. Now, it's tough evaluation because it's a card that you need to like be playing a certain way, and if you don't do that, it's gonna be really bad and all that stuff. But on the upside, your opponent also has to play a certain way. Your opponent can't double spell either, because if your opponent double spells, you can get an extra counter on this too. So on turn 3, it's huge. If you double spell with it, you get to keep it. If you can double spell with it like twice, it sticks around for 2 turns and it just continues to be very large. Your opponent can't cast 2 spells on the same. Well, they can, but they're keeping the whale around if they do that while it's on the battlefield. And so I think that piece, the piece of like not allowing your opponents to double spell profitably or as profitably, is what sells me on this being an above average card, being an actually desirable card. Otherwise, I would be a little concerned that it is too difficult to build around and just you have consistency problems. But I think that in most games, you're going to be able to figure out a way to, cast this on 3 and keep it around for 2 or 3 turns at least. So I think that that's enough time for it to get in for some big swings and take over the game. So I really do like this card. It is a deck building requirement. It has no end of the battlefield effect. Its size is a skill, and that's kind of what it provides. Electrozoa. 2 and a blue for a 3/1 flash flying. When it enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy. Good. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, tap it unless you pay an energy. Very bad. So these type of cards, like this is like essentially an upkeep cost. Not only do you have to pay the energy that it gives you to keep it around, but it doesn't really like it trades evenly. Like it's like a 3-mana deal 3. Like that's not good. And like it can't block either. So if it doesn't have good attacks, it just sits there being tapped the whole game. Yeah, it makes 2 energy, but I think there's just better ways to make energy. There's way better ways to use energy. In a very aggressive like blue deck, I could see this maybe being something you want, and that's why it's in tier 4 and not tier 5, because it does have power and toughness and can attack. But I'm not excited about this at all. Emrakul's Messenger. 1 and a blue for a 2/1 with Devoid and Flying. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn token. Pretty good, right? So, like, 2-mana, 2/1 Flying. That's a good card by itself. Like, that's already really close to tier 2. And sometimes, it incentivizes you to do the things that Blue's doing, which is drawing cards. And you can make mana and tokens and permanents on the board, and that seems pretty sweet to me. Estrid's Invocation. 2 and a blue for an enchantment. You may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of an enchantment you control, except if it's at the beginning of your upkeep. You may exile this enchantment. If you do, return to the battlefield under its owner's control. This is just way too, like, this is just so weird and bad. Yes, if you have an enchantment to copy, this is okay. And you can change which enchantment it's copying if you want. So, like, if you have, like, a Saga and you copy the Saga, you can keep re-triggering. Like, if you wanted to re-trigger the first ability on the Saga or something, you could do that, and then it still works again. I don't know. I'm reaching here. This card seems really bad to me. Flare of Denial. 1 blue for an instant. You may sacrifice a non-token blue creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost, and you can counter target spell. So cancel is the a fine card in limited tier 4. Usually is where you put, if you were to just print cancel into a limited set, that's where I'd put it as tier 4. We saw this with Ice Out. That's where I rated Ice Out. Although Ice Out was actually ended up being tier 2 for me, but tier 3. I loved Ice Out. And is the point. Flare of Denial is very similar. It's 1 blue counter a spell. Okay. Sometimes, and limited is actually going to happen maybe even more like consistently. Sometimes like your opponent's going to cast their 7-drop and you're going to be tapped out, and you're going to be like, yeah, I'll trade like my 3-drop for this spell. Like I'll 2 from it myself to like keep their big busted thing off the board, and that's powerful. It's a powerful thing to do. I do think this card's not going to perform very well in the aggregate because people are going to be sacrificing their creature to counter spells when they should not do that. Don't just do it every time. Like I don't know. It's a card that's not easy to just do well with. It's also a counter spell. I like this card a lot. It's sweet. It's going to be fun to play with. It's going to be annoying to play against. You can't really ever. I mean, there's no way to really play around it. So that's what it is. Harbinger of the Seas. 1 blue for a 2/2 Merfolk Wizard. Non-basic lands are islands. So it's just like a Magus of the Moon, but for islands. Not useful and limited. Everybody plays a ton of basics. Hopeender Coatl. Oh boy. 2 and a blue for a 2/2 with Flash. When you cast this spell, counter target spell an opponent controls unless they pay 1, and it has flying as well. I had this originally in tier 1, and then I was like, this is Protect the Negotiators. And then I was like, pump the brakes. This is not Protect the Negotiators. It doesn't have the mode of being 2 mana to just counter a spell equal to the number of creatures you control. It also doesn't have the, it counters fewer spells. It only counters spells on curve. Yada, yada, yada. All that being said, this card's really, really good. It allows blue to continue to play more instant speed things. Basically, your opponent is just kind of can't play on curve for the rest of the game. If you have this in your hand and you have other stuff to do, I do think it's reasonable to just kind of run it out on 3 because it only counters, it only mana tides them. But I mean, this is sweet. This is really good. So I wouldn't be surprised if I end up feeling like this is tier 1 by the end of the format. Hydroelectric Specimen. So this is an MDFC for blue. It's 2 and a blue for a 1/4 with flash. When it enters the battlefield, you may change the target's instant or sorcery spell with a single target to it. And it also is the, pay 3 to enter untapped source. Yeah, I really like this. This is it's a creature that like actually is somewhat reasonable rate wise. Has flash, it can block. It sometimes your opponent's gonna go, all right, red instant, deal 3 to your thing, cast this, kind of get them. It's not even really a 2 for 1, it's like a 1.5 for 1 because this is not really a whole worth an entire card, but there are times when you want to protect your big thing, and this does that very well. And I think most of the time it's just going to be a land, but that's okay. Lands are good. Kappa Cannoneer. 5 and a blue for a 4/4 with improvise and ward 4. When it or another artifact enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Kappa Cannoneer, and it can't be blocked this turn. So it's essentially a 5/5 for 6. So this card is really powerful. In Vintage Cube, it's excellent. I should just move it up to tier 2. Honestly, I should just move it up to tier 2. There's enough artifacts in this set. I originally had it even lower than this. Ward 4 is like almost X-proof. It's very close to X-proof. The problem with Kappa Cannoneer is that it just kind of sits there. Like it is harder to get it through in limited than in constructed. It also, there's a couple of edict effects in black that including the flare that allow you to get around this thing having word 4. So I have some concerns about Kappa Cannoneer. It's also expensive. I don't know. There's just tons of artifacts. I should just bump it up. I should just bump it up to tier 2. Now, see, here's the thing, right? Originally I had it in originally I had it in like tier 2. Then I moved it down to tier 4. Now I've moved it back up to tier 3. And I'm just kind of sitting here like, is it tier 2? Like, it seems pretty good. It's a 5/5 for 6 that probably costs 5, and it has ward 4. And if you have artifacts under the battlefield, if you just have 2 artifacts under the battlefield under your control, it's a 7/7 unblockable. It's like not crazy that could happen. I just don't know how much blue is doing the artifact. I'm actually going to leave it in tier 3. I'm going to just leave it here. Maybe I'll be super wrong. Maybe I'll just get owned or whatever. But it's so tough with this. I mean, the ward makes it unkillable. It really does. But just like how much, like it doesn't block as well as some things. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's okay, but it's definitely not as good as it is in Vintage Cube. Kozilek's Unsealing. 2 and a blue for an enchantment. It is devoid. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 4/5 or 6, create 2/1/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn tokens with the ability to add mana and sacrifice them. Whenever you cast a creature spell with 7 mana value 7 or greater, you draw 3 cards. So this is kind of a cool build around enchantment. It has the problem of build around enchantments where if you don't draw it, sometimes your deck is like not functional. There's like some other incentives to be playing with this big deck in like blue green. You're playing like all these high mana value creatures. The thing is, you get your value pretty quick, right? You need to have big creatures in your deck. But if you play this on 3 and then on turn 4 you make 2 Eldrazi spawn tokens, you're almost all the way back. Like that's not quite good enough. And then you start taking over the game once you so you play this, untap, play your 4-drop. Once you untap the second time, if you're not really far behind or losing, you're probably going to win. Now, the thing is, I'm really worried about the critical mass of this. The making the Eldrazi spawns makes it easier to cast the 7s, which is great. It means you could have more 7s in your deck, especially if you are building and have like, a Null Drifter, for example. Null Drifter is great with this card. Null Drifter is just sick with this. But I think you can get there. I'm skeptical of it being amazing. Petrifying Meddler. 4 and blue for a 4/5 with the void. When you cast the spell, tap up to one target creature and put a stun counter on it. It has reach. If this card did not have reach, it would be a full tier down. Actually, reach is actually very significant here. I like reach. Reach is kind of like an underrated ability. I think it might be one of the most underrated abilities in limited. Reach is really good, especially on like a 4/5. Like it'll stall the board. This thing stalls the board pretty good. Like this will turn the tempo in your favor pretty good. Like I'm happy about that. And it is a 5-mana spell, which again we just saw with the previous card that is the thing that Blue's trying to do. There's other stuff that pays you off for casting more expensive stuff. It's only a single pip. It's colorless. I don't know. I kind of like it. I kind of like this card. I don't love it. I don't think it's amazing or anything. You need to prioritize it, but I do like it. Reef Worm. 3 and blue for a 0/1. When it dies, you create a 3/3 with when it dies, create a 6/6, which has the ability when it dies, you create a 9/9. Now it makes tokens when it dies, so the tokens are bounceable. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of ways to sacrifice stuff in this set. The funniest thing to do with this card is to play it and then have the blue Flare of Denial in your hand, and then your opponent just casts any spell and they lose. Obviously, that's kind of fun. It's valuable to have a 4-mana creature in play that your opponent's like, well, I don't really want to attack into that. Like they can't really kill it. There's tons of ways to get around this, right? But I do think there's enough ways to utilize it. And again, is your opponent really going to want to attack into this on turn? Like you play this on turn 4, they have 3/3 and a 2/2 in play. Do they really want to attack into this? No, because you just chump the 3/3, you take 2, you go down to 14, and then you have a 3/3 in play that when the 3/3 dies, you make a 6/6, and the 3/3 is now blocking their board a little bit better. I actually think that it's very significant that this dies into a 3/3 and not a 2/2. 3/3, that's kind of the cutoff for me for when a creature becomes relevant in the mid and late game. When a creature is a 3/3, I consider it to be relevant past turn 5 and 6. When it's a 2/2, I only consider it to be relevant up until turn 5-ish. And that's kind of a key difference between, for me, in terms of, it's a critical power and toughness number, the difference between 2 and 3. I think if this made a 2/2 when it died, it would actually be, more bad than you may even think. I think that's more of a downside. Anyways, I think this card's sick, and I'm excited about it. Although it is a 4-mana 0/1, so there's always the possibility that it just sucks when your opponent has a flying creature and you lose. And that's what, and I'll eat it. I'll eat that if that happens. This one I can't possibly draw about. There's no way. It's not possible. Royal Cartographer, 1 and a blue for a 1/3 with landfall. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, you get an energy. You can tap it and pay 6 energy to draw 3 cards. This just has to be sick, right? I just don't believe that there's a world where your 2-drop makes a energy every turn. That's, and it's you can draw 3 cards with it. You're probably not going to do that ever. But just the fact that it makes an energy every turn. There's so many cards in the set that want energy. Making energy is really good. I think this card's really good. It being a 2-drop is also sick. If you play this on 2, your opponent's like, well, I can't really kill it. It's a 2-mana 1/3. It's not really doing anything. It's but it is making a bunch of energy. Theoretically, your deck's built of energy. You can go one. There's just so. I think this card's sweet. Maybe I'm overvaluing how good energy is, and I'm just is it really that good to make 1 energy per turn? And so it's not going to be every turn. It's only going to be 75% of turns. But in blue, you're drawing a lot of cards, so you're probably going to be hitting your land drops more often than not. So I don't know. I like it a lot. Sage of the Unknowable. 1 and a blue for an 0/4. You can tap to add colorless mana. Spend this mana only to cast a colorless spell or to activate an ability. Not excited about this whatsoever. Even if the body is completely irrelevant and 0/4 is just terrible. And adding colorless mana is good in some cases, but not universally applicable enough that you want it. in anything but a specific deck, so I'm just not excited about it. Serum Visionary. 2 and a blue for a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card and scry 2. So yes, Serum Visions. Yeah, I think this card's sweet. I don't know, like 3-mana 2/2 draw card scry 2 is kind of just nails. It's actually like exactly what you want. On turn 3, you would rather cast a Serum Visions than a Preordain in limited, not like a draft environment like this, because oftentimes you're in a spot where you don't really care what you draw immediately. Like obviously scry 2 then draw is nice, but you're actually seeing more cards this way, which is I think usually better. It depends. It varies, I guess is what I would say. But I think this card is maybe slightly better than if it said scry 2 draw. I don't know. It's debatable. We can debate about it for however long. It doesn't really matter. Foundationally, this card's really strong. Yes, it doesn't really synergize with anything other than like maybe drawing your third card turn, but like it's just so independently powerful that I can't imagine it's not a great card. So I'm excited about it. Shadow of the Second Sun. 4 blue for an enchantment. It enchants a player, which is really weird. At the beginning of enchanted player's post-combat main phase, there's an additional beginning phase after this phase. So you untap, upkeep, draw. So essentially, what this card does is you draw 2 cards per turn, right? Post-combat main phase. You untap all your lands, so you get double the mana. And there's also an upkeep step, so if you have upkeep triggers or whatever. So obviously that's powerful. Here's the problem. It's 6 mana. Yes, it works the first turn, so it's not, is it really 6 mana? Yes, it's really 6 mana. It's also an enchantment. Enchantments are pretty fragile in this set. I just think this is too much. Obviously, you can do really cool stuff with this card. It does take over the game if it is left unchecked, but I just think there's too many ways to interact with stuff in this set for this to be good. But it's cool if you can get it to work. I just don't think it's something that you want to be attempting. Shrieking Drake. Single blue mana for a 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, return a creature you control to its owner's hand. It has flying. So obviously on turn 1, if you play this, it bounces itself, so you don't want to do that. There are great things to return in this set. Serum Visionary is one of them. This is like a cool card. Like this is, Nurturing Pixie we just had. This card I think is like strictly worse than Nurturing Pixie. Like I don't know. It certainly doesn't look better. And yeah, it's cool, reprint and whatnot, but not super exciting to be forced to do this, right? There's tons of cool stuff. There's tons of cool things you can do, but this is just not amazing. Sink into Stupor. 1 blue for an instant. Return target spell or non-permanent opponent controls to its owner's hand, or it's a land. I like this one less than some of the other ones. Some of the other MDFCs. This is like I kind of like oscillate the MDFCs between tier 3 and tier 2, because like the spell side has to kind of be good. This the 3 mana for a bounce spell is just really expensive, and it's double pipped. So like this is a land 97% of the time, even like it might even be high. Like if you're ever playing this as a spell, it's a disaster. So is it even an MDFC at that point? The answer is no. So like I don't know. It's like it's kind of like a pain land, which is exciting. Strix Serenade. Single blue mana for an instant. Counter target artifact, creature, or planeswalker spell. Its controller creates a 2/2 bird. You don't want to make this trade in limited. It's very bad. A lot of spells in limited are worse than a 2/2 bird. So don't don't give your opponent a 2/2 bird. Yeah. Also, it can't even counter some stuff. So like, I don't know. Tamiyo meets Story Circle. 1 and a blue for a Saga. Chapter 1, until your next turn, whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, it gets -2/-7 until end of turn. Opponent can't really attack you. Great. Chapter 2, discard any number of cards, then investigate twice for each card discarded that way. And then Chapter 3, shuffle up to 3 target cards from your graveyard into your library. So Chapter 3, not super relevant. Chapter 2 is kind of the main thing to think about. And so it gives you a bunch of 2-for-1s, right? It's like, oh, one card turns into two clue tokens. Cool. The problem is you don't have mana to actually crack them. Like it just this is like a card advantage spell that puts stuff in your graveyard and like is just so dirt will do nothing. I just think this is terrible. Frankly, like I just don't see it. I don't know how you're having enough time to have this be functional. I guess. Tamiyo, Inquisitive Student. Flying, when it attacks, investigate, it's a 0/3. When you draw your third card on a turn, you can exile it and transform it into the Planeswalker. The Planeswalker has 2 loyalty, and you can +2 until end of your next turn. Whenever a creature, or until your next turn, whenever a creature attacks you or Planeswalker control gets -1/-0, you can pay -3 to return an instant sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. If it's a green card, you add blue mana of any color. And you can -7 to draw cards equal to half the number of cards in your library rounded up. You get an emblem with you the maximum hand size. So that's obviously a lot of cards. Mostly you're going to want to keep this on the front, but it's pretty good when you do that. I do actually, funnily enough, think this is worse than Novice Inspector, Thraben Inspector. But it's in that, it's like those cards are tier 1 cards. So this card is it's no shame to be worse than one of the best 1-drops in Limited ever printed, right? So it just isn't, it's just not it's not a crime. And I think this is almost as good. The fact that you can repeatedly generate clues is very good. It has flying, cool. It can become a planeswalker that isn't very good, fine. The planeswalker, like it does enough. It's just enough power here for it to be strong. Like it does have that same thing of it's a 1-drop that gives you a 2-mana play. That's part of the reason Novice Inspector is really good. Part of the reason this card's really good. It doesn't block as well. Do you really want to be blocking with an 0/3 flyer anyway? No, so that's fine. Tempest Harvester, 1 in a blue for a 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy. You can tap it and pay an energy to draw a card and discard a card. I really like this card. I like this card a lot, like a lot. Just a 2-drop, it gets you 2 energy. It enables your draw card synergies. It just does everything. It just really kind of does it all. Looting is good. It being a 2/1 instead of a 1/1 is huge. If it were a 1/1, I wouldn't like it as much. The fact that you can just trade this off is like a high-ish percentage of the time is really nice. And I think it's good. I really like this card. It's in tier 3, but I really like it. Single blue mana for a 1/1. Trade and Wavebreaker. It has Bestow for 1 in a blue. As long as it is a creature, it has Prowess. And if trained creature has +1/+1, it has Prowess. So you're paying 1 in a blue to give your thing +1/+1 in Prowess. I mean, that's pretty good. There's a lot of non-creature spells running around, and it's good ability. And when the Bestow ability wears off, it becomes a 1/1 with Prowess, which is nothing to sneeze at. Just a flexible 1-drop that can be aggressive in some spots and can also just be really nice. Solid, like jam in the mid game. That's like give my creature +1/+1 and then start casting non-creatures and get in there. Put it on a flyer. Always a lot of cool stuff you can do with the Bestow creatures. Tune the Narrative. Single blue mana for an instant draw card, you get 2 energy. Yeah, this is obviously sick. I mean, the real question is whether this is better or worse than Birthday Escape. I'm gonna say worse, but only slightly. It's in that rare air of like cantrip and limited, where like this is gonna probably be Blue's best common. I would be shocked if this isn't Blue's best common. It's hard to imagine a world like I know that there's the 3 mana 2/2 that draws a card, so like that Serum Visions. I know this card is just such a beating. Like get 2 energy for 1 mana, and you also draw a card, and it's an instant. So it really just does it all. And there's not a whole lot to think about here. It just really just crushes every aspect of blue. Ugin's Binding. 2 in a blue for an instant with the Void. You can return target non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand. And whenever you cast a colorless spell with mana value 7 or greater, you may exile it from your graveyard. When you do, return each non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand. So this is kind of a cool, thing. Obviously, the front side's terrible. 3 mana for a bounce is just not good. But if it's in your graveyard and casting things mana value 7 or greater is something that blue is trying to do sometimes, um, you can Cyclonic Rift your opponent, and that's great, and you're probably winning the game. The problem is the front half of this card is so bad that I don't think you want it. I think there's just better ways to get paid off for playing a 7-drop. Like this has to be in your graveyard already, and you have to cast a 7-mana spell, and like I just don't see that being as consistent as you'd like it to be for this to be great. I don't think it's like completely unplayable, but I'm not going to start super high on it. Unfathomable Truths. 4 and a blue for an instant with Devoid. Draw 3 cards and create an 0/1. I didn't miss this was an instant. This is an instant? I thought this was a sorcery. Alright, be advised. You also create an Eldrazi Spawn token. Yeah, I mean, this is a instant speed, 3-mana draw, single pipped, makes a thing that impacts the board. I mean, this is really good. This is a really good card. The question is, do you want it? Like, how highly do you want to take it as a tier 2 or a tier 3? I have it in tier 3. I think that's fine, even though I didn't even realize it was an instant, so maybe it should be bumped up a little bit. The joy of not having that many tiers to put your cards in, so you can. There's a little bit of maneuverability. But yeah, I think this card is really sweet. There is such a thing as too many draw spells. This I think is better than Deep Analysis, even probably. This is better than Deep Analysis, so I think you can play 2 of these comfortably and not be completely like crazy. The concern is like playing 2 of these and playing 2 7-mana spells and a 6-drop and like 3 other 5-drops. That's where you start having problems. So I don't know. I do like it though. I like where this is going. Utter Insignificance. 1 and a blue for a enchantment aura. Enchanted creature loses all abilities and has base power toughness 1/1, and you can pay 2 and a colorless to exile it. So we've seen this type of effect before with what is it called? Apathy, Dreadful Apathy. And it's okay, right? It isn't great to allow your opponent's thing to still be on the board and be a 1/1. It being an enchantment is something that you know like is relevant kind of sometimes. The 2 and a colorless to exile is a thing that you can do that isn't amazing, but is if you need to get rid of it, you can get rid of it for 5 mana and exile it in blue, and that's pretty good. Like that's not bad. You can win combat sometimes. It does lose all abilities, sorry, but it can still attack and block, which is not great. That's the part that concerns me. I think this is okay removal, but not anything special. And the final card in blue is Volatile Stormdrake. 1 and a blue for a 3/2 with flying and hexproof from activated and triggered abilities. When it enters the battlefield, exchange control of it and target creature and opponent controls. If you do, you get 4 energy, then sacrifice that creature unless you pay an amount of energy equal to its mana value. So, it's kind of like a weird guild version of Gilded Drake. If you play this on turn 2, and there's no other creatures on the board, it's just a 2-mana 3/2 flyer, which is pretty good. Like 2-mana 3/2 flying on the play, like that's a beat. I think I'm not 100% sure that that's how this works, but I'm like 90% sure that you do have to have the opponent has to have a creature to target to exchange control of it. If they do not have a creature, you don't. And then sort of the fail case is okay, like yeah, it's really bad to give your opponent a 3/2 flyer. Like that's really bad. But if they have like a 6-mana thing and you have, you got 2 extra energies lying around and they have a 6-drop, and you're like, well, I really like their 6-drop, and I'd be willing to trade. There are some scenarios where you can trade a 2-mana, 3/2 flyer for their opponent's 6-drop and have it be like not a complete disaster. It doesn't have hexproof and everything. It only has like you can still remove it if you have cheap interaction. You can still remove it. I do think this is good. I don't think it's amazing. Obviously, it has the downside of you can't just like play it on turn 4, and if your opponent has creatures, it's not good on the draw. If your opponent has a 2-drop. All that being said, I think the upside of sometimes it's a 2-mana 3/2 flyer, which is an absolute beating. Like that's kind of unbeatable. It's not obviously it just dies to removal. But I do think that the niche upside is kind of something you can do. You can kind of use it, and that's my take on Voltile Stormbreaker. And that's my take on blue. I hope you enjoyed the set review coverage of Modern Horizons 3. There will be more to come, and see you next time.